So I'm just going to introduce Anand Puthran, CEO of McMenon Engineering Services Limited. Anand came to the UK from India 21 years ago. Following graduation, he has embarked on a career in the education sector and then pursued into the energy sector. He's passionate about advocating diversity and inclusion in the workplace. He encourages and envisions Cumbrian business and organisations to amplify this and make the county a recognised, diverse and attractive proposition for investment and progression of future talent. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you? Thank you to University of Cumbria, Lee, Saj, for having me over for a chat. But no thanks for giving me the slot after lunch. It makes it difficult for the speaker and the listeners. I'm sure quite a few of you feel happy sitting behind a computer there rather than sitting on a chair in a hall. Jokes apart, thank you guys. This is quite personal, right? It just feels like a topic where I haven't spoken as much as I possibly should have. Perhaps over the years I should have addressed this more. But it's a personal topic, right? When you're talking about your ethnicity and your race and things like that. And when you come into a different country, and as Lee mentioned, it's been 20 years since I came here. And I suppose somewhere I had bottled it all up and just told myself, hey, look, it's simple, just work hard, right? Do what you do best, and carry on doing your best, and you will ultimately reach where you want to be. I recently read in an article where a study by Oxford University, I think it's in a field college, 2019, said people from other ethnic backgrounds need to apply 60% more times to land a job. And I'm sure I was one of them, who had to apply more. But none of that mattered to me during those times because I was young, ambitious, wanting to prove a point to myself than having to prove a point to anybody else. Right? But that all seemed to change in recent years. It all changed after I started my own business and after I had the responsibility of people in my business. That adds a different flavor to that, I suppose. Then you are starting to think more about these aspects. Previously, where you possibly taught from an individual perspective, from your own personal perspective, now you're starting to think from other people's perspective, right? And then you're asking yourself, am I doing the right thing? As a leader, you got to constantly ask those questions. So my topic today is diversity beyond dashboards. I suppose that is self-explanatory. So yes, I've thought about this many times, and I try and implement this in my organization. So it's all up here, right? I can just reel out numbers and figures and what we are doing and all of that stuff. But I don't want to do that. I want to continue on that personal journey which I mentioned, and I want to make this more of a personalized chat, if you like, possibly infuse it with a bit of humor. Why not? It is a serious topic, I understand. But hey, let's also see it from a lighthearted perspective if we can in between, because if that contributes to a change, that is a better way of making change than being forceful. So diversity beyond dashboards, as it says, pretty simply, all I'm suggesting there is do away with the tokenism. It's not about putting my picture or somebody who looks different, their picture on a brochure to prove a point that you are doing the bare minimum for diversity and inclusion in your organization, right? What more you do, what meaningful activities have you taken to ensure that diversity and inclusion is a real thing? Now, for me, I've consciously tried to avoid, and I must admit, avoid not in a negative sense, or maybe let's put it this way. I've tried to be inclusive about diversity, if I may put it that way. So I don't necessarily see it just from an ethnic perspective or an ethnic minority or a different person from a different country perspective, although I should be from my own experience. But as a leader of a company, I've often forced myself to think from my people's perspective too. So I cannot force myself to necessarily think from just one perspective. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be. And today's conference is all about that, right? So we very much should. But I'm just putting it from my perspective, from my experience, right? So for me, predominantly diversity has been all inclusive, right? LGBTQ, all these elements inclusive. As the CEO of a company, I need to make sure that I am reiterating and reinforcing that message over and over again. The reason I'm reiterating and reinforcing that message over and over again is one way of removing the bias. Every one of us, we tend to have an element of bias, right? And whether it is from the background you come in or whether you're in the current circumstance which you live in, there is an element of bias. But we also know what is the right thing and the fair thing to do. When you know what is the right thing and the fair thing to do, you got to constantly reiterate and reinforce that message. And trust me, it's worked for me where some of the biases which I have inculcated from my past life has probably overcome. Now, if somebody asks me what biases they are, I'm not going to answer that question because I don't want to get into another debate there. But in reality, by just reinforcing those positive, right messages, I have managed to overcome some of the biases I've had. And I believe as a leader, and anybody in a leadership position, whether it is leading one person or a thought leader or somebody who leads a billion-dollar organization, right? As a leader, you have that responsibility to constantly reiterate and reinforce that correct message. Now, if you don't do that, the risk is the people who are part of your organization or who follow you might start doing things which are not correct. Now, therein comes the risk. Now, I did tell you that I will lace it with a bit of humor, right? I learn things by observing. That's my biggest strength. If somebody asks me what's my biggest strength, I'll say I learn from observing, right? I learn from everybody. It could be a baby. It could be a very old person. I learn from everybody. Recently, there's been this big discussion about James Bond, right? The James Bond movie came. I'm a huge fan of James Bond, guys. Absolutely, no two ways about it. So there has been this discussion about James Bond, and there's been talk about, hey, can we have a black Bond? Hey, can a woman become a Bond? All valid discussions, right? And then this discussion slowly creeps into LinkedIn. That's probably the only social media where I am present in, right? And I'm thinking, okay, well, this is a professional medium, so let's see where this goes to. It's interesting because people you're connected to you, especially in leadership positions, they are making comments. And then there are these comments, right, which caught my attention. This is in an argument put against the point that the next James Bond or 007 should be a woman. So somebody goes, not just somebody, quite a few people go on to make the point that, or should Wonder Woman then be a man? I don't know what to say about that, guys, but the sheer audacity of comparing Wonder Woman with James Bond, right? You got to be Wonder Woman to be compared to a man, right? Now, I'm laughing about this, right? But the fact of the matter is, in reality, that's what's probably happened through the years. Women have had to be Wonder Women to be compared to normal, ordinary men, right? Now, fundamentally, I have a problem with that, guys. Yeah. Now, let me clarify something here. I'm not trying to take this topic and break it down into movies. This is a very serious topic. I'm just using this as an example. Like I said, I'm a big James Bond fan, right? So yes, James Bond needs to be whoever he is. But for a minute, let's just assume that it's a real spy character in the Queen's service, right? So James Bond can be that man, stereotypical character by Ian Fleming. Let that be the case. But I do have a problem if you say that secret agent who represents the country also has to be the same kind of stereotypical man. Therein lies the problem. Why cannot it be a man from a different background? Why cannot it be a woman? In that context, when somebody says a comment like, oh, are you going to ask Wonder Woman to be a man next? There I have a problem, right? I'm not asking James Bond to become Jane Bond, but all I'm saying is that if there is a position open as a top spy for the Queen's service in this government, that should be open to absolutely everybody. That, in my mind, is diversity and inclusion, right? Now, the reason I'm mentioning this here, guys, with all due respect, was I found people who are in influential positions, leadership positions, who are making comments like this. Now, I'm not going to judge them, right? And these were serious comments, guys. It wasn't comical comments and just a Saturday night sitting at home kind of comment. These were serious comments on a platform like LinkedIn. So these need to be taken seriously. For me, that means a message from your leader of your organization. Take me, for example. If I made a comment like that on my LinkedIn platform, all my employees who follow me think that it is okay for them to also consider these kind of aspects within the company. It is okay for them to have a biased approach to a different person. That is not okay for me, guys. As a leader, I think it's extremely important that we set the tone. And this is where I said, by reiterating and reinforcing a certain message, it might be slow, it might take time, but it will happen. So if you take my organization, for example, right, McMenon Engineering Services, we are an engineering and manufacturing company based in Workington. We export to over 50 countries. 3 years back, 3.5 years now, or coming up to almost 4, I acquired this business from a multinational company called ABB, which most of you might be aware of. Now, the advantage of actually acquiring it from a business like ABB is the fact that that exposure to multinationals, multicultures, has allowed my staff to embrace diversity and inclusiveness as much as anybody else. That is a great advantage I acquired as part of that business. And then I take it as my duty to ensure that that message is constantly reinforced. So as a rule, any presentation we make in our company, whether it is technical or commercial, we will include a message along with your health and safety message, your quality message, your environmental message. We will include a message on diversity and inclusion, lest we forget. This, my friends, is the point where I mentioned about reinforcing and reiterating it. It is not enough if I tell, hey, I'm the leader, I kept mentioning it a couple of times, everybody else is going to take it over. It doesn't happen that way, especially in a place like Cumbria, where the proportion of the population, for a minute, I'm not suggesting that it is a difficult place to be or this is a racist county, none of that. But the proportion, as we all know, needs constant reinforcement to ensure that there is more of an understanding and acceptance of people from various backgrounds. And as a businessman, I can also explain why I think it is important, because I think I need to explain that too. It's not just about a matter of principle to say, hey, let's just go up about appointing a different people. So referring back to that joke where I mentioned about James Bond and the spy, where it has to be the right person for the right job, as long as you have the qualities, I'm also telling you, do not bracket those qualities and to say, this is what you want. Now, if I bracket my qualities and say, this is what I want, and I'm trying to manufacture mini-me's, I'll tell you, the organization will fail. You need diversity of thought, right? And that diversity of thought comes from being different people from different backgrounds. It is already there. You don't have to go and manufacture it. You just need to accept it. Now, if you can inculcate that acceptance into your staff members, into your colleagues and your people, that's a huge advantage for your organization, simply because that difference of thought adds great value, that creativity, right? Creativity to me is among the most important skill sets somebody can have. And that comes naturally based on where you were born, what kind of family you're coming from, what kind of atmosphere was there when you were learning. And different people have the different kind of creativity. Why would you want to miss it? As a business owner, I don't want to miss that creativity. Right? So the point I'm trying to make is, if somebody comes and tells us, hey, something need not be changed, as in the example I gave you, I refuse to believe that. If we had said some things shouldn't change, and if we had left it about 100 years back saying something shouldn't change, this should continue. Hey, this is the University of Cumbria Forum, right? The vice chancellor of this university is a woman. Now, that wouldn't have happened if we had left it that way. The chancellor of our country, or the health secretary, or the home secretary, or the education secretary, the business secretary, I can go on. All these people from different backgrounds wouldn't be here if we had said some things shouldn't change. It should change, and it should change for the right reasons. So that diversity of thinking for businesses is extremely important, guys. And again, taking from real life examples and probably bringing in another entertainment aspect, which is extremely touching for me personally. I've never been a football fan, but I watched the Euro matches where the England football team played. To me, Gareth Southgate is a hero. He's a leader. To me, the English football team now is a hero. They are leaders. Why? Despite difficulties, right? Countries have stood against them because they took the knee. But their conviction to continue taking the knee in support of the 3 or 4 of their colleagues who are undergoing racism wherever they go, without exception, be it Scotland, England, Poland, wherever they go. But these guys, who are often accused of saying, oh, you guys are money bags and all you care about is making money and things like that, have shown the world that despite such pressure, they have continued to take the knee. To me, as a leader, that's a lesson where it could be difficult, yet if you persevere and if you constantly reinforce that message, as did the English football team, by the time they reached the finals, nobody was talking about negative about them at all. They were all rooting for that team. There is a lesson for us to learn. And from a Cumbrian perspective, I definitely feel that too, because as an investor who has invested into Cumbria, and I'll tell you, this is a very practical thing, right? When you're investing in the region, you want to, or anywhere, you want to know how good that company is, the people, the culture, and if it's investable. And I'll tell you, it is investable if you have diversity of thinking in there. And the best way of bringing in diversity of thinking is to have different kind of people in that business. So for Cumbria's sake, if we are able to bring in more people into Cumbria from diverse backgrounds, I honestly feel that this county would be much more successful than it already is. And that is a very important point. Now, I'll finish off by making a final point here. What I've heard being mentioned as the pendulum effect. Now, I've spoken in terms of what others should be doing or how the businesses should be doing and how we all should be embracing diversity and inclusion. But equally, I also tell myself that I also have a responsibility, i.e., the pendulum effect, right? A pendulum, if you push to one side and leave it, the more you push to a side, it goes to the other extreme, right? So as a person coming from a diverse background myself, if I was going to push that pendulum, I better be prepared that the pendulum is going to go to the other extreme too. So I also have a responsibility to reach out. Now, if I recall Sajja's presentation this morning, she very eloquently put it, right? She said 50%, let's go in there. Keep smiling. The first time you don't get a smile back, keep smiling, you will get a smile back. Now that to me, being the giver, if I remember what she said, is also our responsibility. Coming from diverse backgrounds, trying to assimilate into a new place, you can be the giver. You don't have to always consider others to be the giver. We can be that giver too. And I've been that giver. And I think if all of us go with that smile, like Sud said, we'd probably be in a very, very better and positive place, which Cumbria already is. But there is definitely more scope to have much more of that positivity into the Cumbrian businesses. And on that note, I'll finish off, guys. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Anand. Really appreciate that. And yeah, that difference of thought and getting people around the table absolutely resonated. I think I can see already there's a couple of hands popping up there. So if you're comfortable, we'll pop to those hands that popped just nipped up there for some questions. I think it was Leslie first and then Marcia.
Yes. Hi, Anand. Yes, I wanted to get in there first, actually. I've been eagerly awaiting your talk all day, actually. I guess one of the things I was most interested in, being a lead in a diversity role for my own organisation, was you talked about inculcating diversity of thought, getting your colleagues, your staff members to understanding how important that is. But I'm interested in your ideas on how practically that can happen. So what practical steps do you take in your organisation to ensure that there is that open, inclusive and tolerant atmosphere, and that diversity of thought is appreciated and valued?
Thanks, Leslie. Thanks for that question. It is difficult. It's not going to be easy. And like I said, when the proportion of the population is to one side, it is. And in my business, I will tell you from a diverse background, it's a minority, and I am part of that minority too. So it makes it more difficult because I'm also thinking that I don't want to be hurting somebody else's sentiment, right? Because if like I said, the pendulum effect. If I push the pendulum too much to one side, the others might feel that I'm not representing them. And being the CEO of the company, I represent everybody in that company, right? So one of the actions I already spoke about, right? It's a small action, but every presentation talking about diversity. So our staff members who make that presentation, from initially a technical director, for example, I'm not naming anybody, and it is not a technical director, I'm just giving you an example, who would have thought, hey, I'm talking about particular instruments out here. Why am I all of a sudden talking about diversity here? Now, after 3 years of our ownership, doesn't bat an eyelid, right? They speak about it in their own words. It's no longer Anand Putran's words or the other manager's words. They speak in their own words. Now, that is a change. And then when you come to recruitment policies, right, we are learning constantly as well. So I'm not saying that we got it 100%, right? When it comes to recruitment policy, we make that noise heard. So that's another simple step, of us communicating that this is who we are, this is how we want to be, and this is why I said we don't focus particularly on particular aspects. It is about inclusiveness totally. So it's small actions, Leslie. But I do believe these small actions will definitely cascade into larger effect in the coming days. And as we grow, I can assure you, we will be making more investments to ensure that we take concrete steps. But I'll tell you one thing, we don't shy away from that. Even though the majority of the population might be from a certain section, we don't shy away from that, and nor do my staff. I've never come across my staff feeling awkward when these discussions are made in the organization.
Thank you. That was really insightful.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Marcia, I'll come to yourself next, please.
Thank you. Hello, Anand. How are you?
I'm good.
Listen, nice job, and nice way of speaking to all of us. My biggest concern is that you are a boss. When I say of a different color, obviously that's true, but what I really mean is your foundation is so different. So you then bring a whole lot of that to your work environment and to the way you run your business. Is there a time when you speak to colleagues who are on the same level as you, where they can understand some of the principles and some of the things that you've put in place that really could exist successfully in loads of other places?
If I understand your question correctly, Marcia, you're probably talking about potentially any hurdles I might have felt when I'm communicating with people at my own level. I mean, is that?
I don't mean hurdles. I mean, do you ever do it? I mean, because you are a voice that should be heard. And I don't know if there's a forum when it comes to bosses where you can communicate the good points that you've given us to them. They are in the position that you're in where they can make things happen.
Oh, I see. I see. Sorry, Marcia. I thought you were talking about internally within the organization, but externally, is the people. Yes, yes. I must admit, not yet. To a certain extent, I make conscious conversations about that. But that is possibly one thing I miss in Cumbria, to be honest with you, because in an article which I wrote, I did say that the responsibility lies with the organizations and the leaders. So that's the point I'm trying to make, right? Leaders should take the initiative. I should admit, no, there aren't any forums. And I'll mention a particular incident. This is not as a criticism, and I won't mention the name of the company, but a much larger company, one of the biggest employers in this region. I raised a point about diversity because I am a supplier to them. I wanted to feel comfortable dealing with that company, right? And it was pretty much a token response from their CEO, passing it to another senior manager staff who sent me a polite reply saying that, hey, Anand, we really need to pick this up. Let's catch over a cup of coffee. 6 months now, and the coffee hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not waiting for that coffee. But this is such an important instance where when you make a commitment like that, you ought to follow it up. Otherwise, it becomes tokenism. So to your question, Marcia, no, I am trying to talk to different people, but it's not the level I would like it to be.
Okay. So Anand, maybe we should talk after my talk.
Certainly we can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We will talk, Marcia, after me and Anand have talked first.
If Leslie doesn't get in there first. All right.
There's going to be a domino effect here, people.
Chat comments there. So I was beginning to worry that I was boring people, but I'm glad questions are coming my way.
No, you know what? And you're not boring at all. And part of the problem of your presentation is you say things very simply and you just make them happen. So I listen to somebody like you and it's amazingly refreshing. My problem is that you are not typical. You are not the usual. So I almost want to look for what you said you didn't want. I want some mini yous. So that we can have a better work experience and one that really is more inclusive.
Thank you, Marcia. Kind words.